Welcome along to the Final Furlong podcast. It is our Breeders' Cup special. And if we're going to chat about American racing, then we got to assemble a top team. First up, the Don, the guru of British-based American punting, the legend from AtTheRaces, Barry Faulkner. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me back.
It's not possible for us to do the Breeders' Cup without you. And you're going to be a very, very busy man for the excellent AtTheRaces website because you're basically writing about every single race there.
I've got that's my gig for the weekend. Cracking through the Friday this afternoon, and I'll get on finish Friday, probably when we finish here, then finish the left tomorrow morning again to Saturdays. And hopefully we're all done by Friday night.
I'm looking forward to getting your insight for the next couple of days. We are also joined by a man who's a familiar face to viewers of Sky Sports Racing. He is an international betting expert. He's also an international man of mystery and a Guinness connoisseur. Tim Carroll, welcome back to the show.
G'day, Emmet. G'day, Barry. Good to be here, mate.
Great to have you both on. Lads, just trying to get our heads around the track configuration at Santa Anita, pace and draw bias. Barry, what's the crucial things we need to know about both the turf and the dirt before we place a bet on the Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita?
But it's a bog standard American dirt oval, mile round, 7 furlongs turf course. They do have the quirk of the downhill course, which is used for the 1.25 mile and 1.5 mile turf races, which means they start pretty quickly. The turf should be lightning fast. The dirt's interesting, but up to this year, you would have said, well, there's only one place to be at Santa Anita, that's on the front end. But reports coming through for the last couple of meets there is that the horses closing, certainly around 2 turn trips, are doing better than they had done traditionally. So we'll have to just keep a good eye on that over the next couple of days.
And there's going to be a couple of races at Santa Anita that are non-Breeders' Cup races. Do you take the view that if you really fancy a horse now and you're getting a fair price, you should take it? But if you're a little bit iffy, possibly just tune into Sky, ITV, Racing TV, and see how those early races are going?
Yeah, I think that I'd always like to see how the track's running. One thing to remember in the track, and Tim knows more about this than I do, that the track superintendent can basically prepare the track the way he wants it. So, I mean, in the old days, going back in time, they used to love eye-popping fractions. 2000 sprint, for example, first quarter went in 20.82, a sub-21 second first quarter, because they effectively scraped the track down because they wanted the crowd to go, woo, when the number was called. Not so bad nowadays, although they'll go plenty quick enough.
All they need is a fireworks display, and it'll be like Epsom all over again, just before one of the most important races of the year. They'll never live that down, by the way, ever. Tim, in terms of the European raiders, so Graham Dench wrote an excellent piece in the Thoroughbred Daily, thoroughbredracing.com, which was a stark reminder about the European record in California for Breeders' Cup meetings, because we had a fantastic meeting last year, Charlie Appleby and Aidan O'Brien walking away with 3 winners apiece. Then you go back through how we've done in Santa Anita in the past. Last time it was in Santa Anita, only Joseph, in fact, trained a winner for Europe. That was Irides in the Filly Mare Turf. And 3 winners at Del Mar in 2021 when it was last in California. All 3 trained by Charlie Appleby. And with the greatest of respect to a very talented trainer, not a man we'd be hanging our hat on with the way his stable's gone in form. So how do you feel about the European raiders, and how difficult will it be for them to perform in Santa Anita at the 40th running of the Breeders' Cup?
Well, I think there's a couple of things to take into consideration. Let's be honest, that the European turf form's a lot stronger than the American turf form. So we've got that on our side. What we've got against us is Santa Anita, and Barry mentioned it a moment ago, it's a tick over 7 furlongs, the turf track. It is a tight turning turf track. And obviously a lot of the European horses, and there are a few exceptions this year, as there are most years for the breeders, but a lot of the European horses, the way we ride them over here is very differently. We like to ride them quietly. We like to see them finishing off their races whereas a lot of the American dirt horses, they're speed horses. A lot of the American turf horses are like that as well. But I think we've got a very good representation this year. And I think you've got to remember too, we talked about the last couple of times it's been held at Santa Anita. I remember going over there, I think it was 2008, and I think back then there was 13 Breeder Cup races, and we won 6 of them. We had a really good year. So, okay, admittedly, the dirt then, they had the synthetic track, and that certainly helped. But I think the Europeans will do well. It's more just having a look at the style of horse, which we'll touch on as we go through the races. one or two Europeans I think have got really good form, but I just don't think they're going to like Santa Anita.
Yeah, and on that, Barry, just in terms of pace angles, like we're going to talk about the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf first up, so we're on the turf. But it seems to me as though those who were all drawn on the inside, those who were all drawn quite low, Crimson Advocate, No Name Mets, Tiger Bell, and Big Evs, they all want to go forward. So is that going to, like, Big Evs is obviously very fast away from the gates, and so is Crimson Advocate for that matter. But is that then going to spectacularly backfire on those horses when they want to be so far up with the pace and they're all drawn together?
I'm not so sure. I think that the one thing that has changed over the last couple of years, we're now sending horses over there and training them to actually get out the gate quick. Big Evs is a good example. And in the turf sprint on a Saturday, you've got another one who can scoot out, living the dream. So, but once you're there, it's a matter of just, you know, keeping on. And I think Big Evs, I'd love to see him do it, but I think he will come under pressure late. But what he does do is spread the field out. You can almost win from anywhere in the sprint. Because all the tracks that tend to be used to the Breeders' Cup are standard type ovals. It's either 5 furlongs or 5.5. And I'm not as worried as I would have been, let's say, 5 years ago.
Okay, well, let's begin with the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint. Big Evs is the favourite. Appleby always trains the winner of the Breeders' Cup, but this is Mick Appleby, no relation to Charlie. Huge chance, though, of winning. An 11-4 shot currently is the best price available on this side of the pond. Crimson Advocate, we haven't seen her since Royal Ascot. I know she's been doing some pieces of work that have been all public since September, but it is a concern that we haven't seen her for quite some time. I like her a lot, though. Johnny Velasquez on board, as he was at Royal Ascot. She's a 5-1 shot. George Weaver's other horse, No Name Mets, who also ran at Royal Ascot but did not fare as well as Crimson Advocate, 11-2 shot. Sliders, 10-1. Cherry Blossom for Aidan O'Brien and Ryan Moore, an 11-1 shot. And then Jessica Harrington and Shane Foley's Gimme the Beat Boys, who cost over $1 million at the sales just before Royal Ascot, and that has not paid off, but it might pay off here, Barry Faulkner.
You've actually identified my long shot in the first race. I think I like Give Me the Beat Boys. Plenty quick enough in the middle park. He finished fourth there, which a finish he shares with last year's winner. Came out of that same race in fourth place. Been running in the best two-dog race, the Grade 1s over here. Coming up a bit shy in those, but I think cut back to this trip, I just think he's got a knocking chance in this race. Certainly as good as the ones you're mentioning, the more obvious ones, Big Evs, etc.
It's all about price, and in fact, clearly, either Barry Faulkner has gotten stuck in again, or Tim Carroll has just jumped on because he also likes the horse. 12-1 has disappeared, and 11-1 is now the best price about Gimme the Beat Boys. I do like this horse an awful lot, Tim. I think he's got a very, very fair chance, and Barry makes a really strong case for him. You could look back at Royal Ascot and say it was a little bit underwhelming that he was beaten by River Tiber, but that's a very good horse, I think, and we'll talk more about him a little bit later. And he wasn't beaten far in the context of that race either. Disappointing at the Curragh, race that probably didn't pan out really well. But behind Van Dijk being beaten 3 1/4 lengths, like Van Dijk would lap these, I think, if he was here. All due respect to Big Evs. He's a serious sprinter for next season. 11-1 is the thing that I can't get away from. The price is just a little bit too big, and betting is all about the price, Tim.
Yeah, well, I think you've got to be price sensitive. Look, it's not a race from a betting perspective. It doesn't overly excite me, but I'm looking forward to seeing the race. I'm going to be a little bit more boring than you guys. I'm going to stick with Crimson Advocate. I thought she was very good in the Queen Mary. She had Relief Rally in behind, and as we know, Relief Rally, well, she's gone on to win the Super Sprint and the Lowther Stakes, and William Haggis has said she's an all-out 2-year-old. So I think that form has a very nice shape. Now, I know that it's a 5 furlong sprint on turf, but you know, she does get a few pounds from the boys as well, which helps. The thing I find a little bit interesting is George Weaver did say afterwards that this would be where, after Royal Ascot, this is where they'd head to. But he did say as recently as August they were going to give a 1 lead-up run at either maybe Keeneland or Belmont. Now, that never happened. I'm not sure why it didn't happen. I don't know whether it was just a change of plan or whether there was a little setback. But one thing I would say, if we were talking about even a mile race, I'd be a little bit concerned. But I sort of found, if I can go back to my riding days, and I know that we're talking about when, you know, Moses was playing fullback for Nazareth, but I found a lot of 5 furlong sprinters actually ran best fresh, even if they weren't 100% fit, because they were just all sort of coiled and ready to go. And look, reading between the lines a little bit as well, I think George Weaver's got quite a big rap on this filly, and I think for a young filly to do what she did at Royal Ascot, she's obviously well above average.
Yeah, and she was clinging on at the depth. Like, she just clung on. But she clung on from Relief Rally, who's only been beaten once, and that was by Crimson
Mile in
Advocate.
front of us.
Say again?
And a long way in front of the others as well.
Yeah.
Let's remember too, Royal Ascot, you're going up a staircase all the way. This is a flat 5. This is a quick 5. I think well, I don't think, I know it will suit her. It'll definitely suit Big Evs as well. I mean, I'd love to see Big Evs win it, if I'm being honest. And I haven't actually had a play in this race, not a serious one. But if I was playing one up, especially given that she's been shopped around at about 5-1 at the moment, I think Crimson Advocate would be my play.
Yeah, and Barry, in terms of the track configuration, how much of Santa Anita is downhill over the 5 furlongs for this sprint race?
None of it. It's just as flat as whatever you want to call a flat thing. You say rude things in the old days when we were permitted, so I shan't say that one. It involves witches. But no, it's dead flat. You can't get any flatter.
Okay, so flat as a pancake. So not quite that, but speed would be a massive asset for her. It's the same question for me as Tim. Why has she not run since? She has been picked up by Rodin Racing, who've also just acquired James Doyle as well for his services next year. And it's pretty significant that they've forked out, I'm assuming, a considerable amount of money for a Royal Ascot winning filly. Maybe he wants to keep her fresh. Maybe that's the reason. Like, she has been doing plenty of workouts, so I wouldn't be overly concerned about her well-being.
I'll tell you that. It's interesting, basically, because you've got a third Royal Ascot winner in the race, well, Valiant Force, who won at 150-1 back at Ascot. So a lot of Berkshire form coming into Arcadia, California.
Yeah, very much so. I am with Give Me the Beat Boys. I think I'll do some sort of an exacta with Crimson Advocate. Is there a 1-2-3 for Barry Faulkner?
If I was looking at I mean, I quite like No Name Emmet's Weaver's other horse, ideally spotted as well. But it's a bit of a crapshoot. Again, Tim knows, say, from his riding days, you miss the kick here and you're gone. You're not going to come back from a bad break here. But that would be the one I'd be chucking in a third slot in an exacta, I think. Oh, I may
box exacta.
Yeah, but the box exacta.
The box exacta for Barry Faulkner. Barry is legendary for the box exacta. I knew nothing about that until I started watching AtTheRaces back in the day. And Barry was constantly going on about the box exactas and constantly banging them in as well. So when he speaks, listen to what this man is saying. He's got this licked. Tim, for you, 1-2-3?
Oh, look, I'm going to be a little bit boring. I like Crimson Advocate. I'm going to put Big Evs in for second. That would be my 1-2. I haven't really sort of got a strong opinion outside of that. I wouldn't be surprised if Slider runs all right, but I'm a little bit concerned about the wide draw, if I'm honest.
Okay. The NetJets Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, Grade 1, 5-4 favorite is Tamara for Richard Mandela and Mike Smith. And this one is really the big hype horse from California. We've seen this before, though, Barry. A big, superior Californian horse comes into the Breeders' Cup and then spectacularly bombs out. Is she going to be a horse who bombs out, or is she a lock for Friday night?
Well, you only have to go back to last year. Cody's Wish in the juvenile last year, 4-7, ran like a drain. This girl, obviously, to just run through her history, she's the daughter of Beholder, who won this race in 2012. The next year, she won the Breeders' Cup Distaff. She had all sorts of problems and missed a year and came back in 2016 and won the Distaff again. She's only the second runner to win 3 races at the Breeders' Cup, the other being the mighty Goldikova. So with parentage like that and the sort of form she's shown, there's no surprise that she's been hammered in the market. My question is she really that dominant on what we've seen? We've got no east and west form comparison, really. You've got 2-year-old fillies who are going to be maturing the way teenagers do at different rates. Yeah, she did it well enough, but is she such an overwhelming favourite to warrant what she'll go off at? 10-11 morning line, she'll go off much shorter than that, I think, on the day. But she's just one I couldn't bet at those sort of prices.
Tim, what about you?
Look, I like her. I think she's very, very smart. It's interesting we're talking about her dam there, but her sire also finished third in the male equivalent of this race. So I think she goes around 2 turns for the first time. I don't think there'll be any problems there. My big query is actually she's been a little bit tardy out of the gates. Now, I know she won by a big margin last time and she overcame that, and she overcame an even worse start on debut. But this is going to be very competitive race. I'd like to see her come out cleanly, but the one thing I would say, and I appreciate what Barry's saying, she's going to go up. I would think she's going to go off in the red, and I wouldn't be rushing in to back her at that price. But having said that, I really wouldn't want to bet against her either. And maybe as a racing fanatic, I'd just like to see her come out and maybe do something a little bit special.
Who do you like in the race, Tim? Sorry, Barry, go on.
No, just think there was a report coming out this week that she's not really impressed the work watchers this week either. She's not looked lackluster, doesn't really look up for it rather, which is, again, the old adage, I believe half of what you see and nothing of what you hear. But bearing that in mind, but it is a little bit disconcerting to get a report like that.
Yeah, that's one of the major advantages that American racing has over British and Irish racing. We can get these workouts and these public gallops. If you were seeing the Ballysoil battalion yesterday, even if I could use my mouth words correctly, it only took 15 minutes for mouth words to appear on the Final Furlong podcast today. The Ballysoil battalion is a fascinating sight to see all those horses working together, and hopefully that's information that we can use going forward. When she's this short a price, I'm definitely prepared to give her a skip. I'm a little bit surprised that just FYI is the price she is, given the fact that she's trained by Bill Mott. She's recorded a massive Racing Post rating, in fact, equal to Tamara. I guess it comes down to the fact that she's poorly drawn, Tim.
Yeah, look, it probably does. She went around in that grade one, but she won last time out. There's nothing wrong with the form. Look, personally, I think away from the favourite, Candid would be the one you'd flag up from the Todd Pletcher yard. She won a grade one at the second start. She looks a very nice filly in the making. The thing that worries me a little bit about her, and I suppose at the moment we're kind of pointing everyone away from these market principles, but they've held on to her in both starts so far, and she's drawn down in one. And if you know anything about American racing, you'll know that quite often they don't like to draw low. They prefer to be somewhere in the middle probably, but even high compared to low. But I think she would, if you're talking purely on the form book, she'd be the one that I would side with against the favourite. But I just want to mention another one that Todd Pletcher's got here that's at a massive price, double figures, scalable. Now, she's only had 2 runs. She didn't really do a lot on debut, but she ran a lot better last time out when she ran on strongly. Now, she hasn't got the sort of runs on the board, if you like, of a few of the other fillies here, but I just like the way she worked home last time, and I think a high pressure over the extended mile in a race like this, don't be surprised if she hits the frame here at a big price.
She is 25 to 1, currently a $200,000 daughter of Speightstown. Barry, who do you like in the race?
I backed Candid already, but I take your point about just FYI. Fascinating, the difference of views on figures. You said Racing Post have got a joint with the other one we're talking about. But if you look at the other organisation in the States, DRF made the last run 75, Equibase 77, and they're running on the same scales, these guys. And Brisnet go 96. So they're the cards we use in they're used on the AtTheRaces in Sky. And one of them, Equibase, had a running 8 points below her previous run, whereas Brisnet had a running 11 points above. So you pay your money, you take your choice. I think I'd rather believe Brisnet. I think she's got an each-way squeak as well. It's the point Tim's making. We put with 3 horses there who we can all see as viable winners. And, we're saying you've got this odds-on shot, be shorter than 10 to 11. What do you want to do? I know what I'd do.
And the other thing is too, sorry, if I could just jump on the back of that, if Tamara goes for an absolute bath in the betting and ends up, say, 6 to 4 or something like that, that would actually worry me even more, given the reports we've heard coming out from the track over the last week.
Yeah, the only thing with that, Tim, my counter would be that there's a heck of a lot of mug money goes on in the States, in the pools in the States. I'm talking about the pools on the betting over here, from people on course and once a year punters. They'll do Kentucky Derby, Breeders' Cup. The Kentucky Derby, the long shots always go off shorter than they should because of the anti-Doris money in the infield.
Yeah.
Actually, when you're approaching these races, and question for both of you, I'll ask you first, Barry. From our side of the pond, we can obviously have the fixed odds betting, but there will be betting companies who are allowing you to bet into the pool. So for the vast majority of the races of the Breeders' Cup, particularly this one, are you more inclined to go for the pool betting and take your chance against a hot favorite like that? Or when it's the fixed odds, is there more of an advantage taking the prices that we can get from the big firms over here?
again, going back to the early days when I was involved in US racing, there was some wide disparities between the fixed odds and the pools. They've narrowed significantly, and I think there are not a great deal between them. And the view is, if you get somebody who's paying best odds guaranteed, or you can get a boost, go for fixed odds. I don't think you're going to get much advantage in the pools.
Tim, for you?
Look, to be honest with you, Emmet, I've got no choice, because this is a conversation for another day, but I can't get on with any of the firms over here anymore unless I want to bet in £5. And, £5 amounts, and without sounding like a smart ass, that's no good to me.
Didn't you have 4 winners in Hong Kong today?
5, actually. Yeah, had a pretty good day. Had a pretty good day, and 3 of them were at good each way prices. Where we were a little bit unlucky, Happy Valley's a very hard track. I've said this to many people, and don't worry, we won't get away from the American stuff too much, but I think that obviously luck is a massive variable in any horse race, but Happy Valley, my goodness, times it by 5. And our last selection of the day, Sugar, who didn't turn out to be too sweet, actually came out a little bit slow, and I had him mapped to sit sort of the first 4 or 5, and then he ran up the backside of a horse when he looked like he was coming for a winning run. Anyway, long story short, he was the 3rd leg of quite an attractive acca. But I can't complain. No. The top bet went in, the next best went in, so landed the double and had a little bit on the other. So yeah, it was a very good day. And if I wasn't doing this pod tonight, I reckon I'd be up to about my 5th pint by now.
I'm not stopping you. You can have pints. We can all. Is this Coca-Cola or is this Coca-Cola with vodka? Drink responsibly, everybody, and gamble responsibly as well. Isn't that a YouTube thing? Okay, just FYI for me, I think the prices vary from 8 to 1 to 12 to 1. You can get 10 to 1. Apologies, 12 is now gone. Slightly concerned about the draw, but I want to take on this red hot favorite. So just FYI for me, and hopefully another big Grade 1 winner for Justify, who's had a fantastic season, particularly for Aidan O'Brien with Opera Singer and City of Troy. Tim, are you going to swing for the fences with the 25 to 1 shot?
Yeah, look, just a bit of an each-way play on Scalable. I wouldn't complain too much if Tamara came out and did something a little bit special, though, because it's good for the game. It's what we want to see.
Who wins if she wins? Racing. That's who wins. Barry Faulkner, your final selection for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies.
Juvenile Fillies was justified, just FYI. Little each way.
I'm going to have more on now that Barry's is supporting that horse as well. Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf. The favourite is Carla's Way for Simon and Ed Crisford. James Doyle on board. He's going to start a new job next year, which sounds pretty exciting for him. Porta Fortuna for Oisin Murphy and Donncha O'Brien, an 11 to 2 shot. She Feels Pretty, 13 to 2. And Content for Aidan O'Brien and Ryan Moore, basically subs for Opera Singer, who they've deemed scratched for the season. She'll come back with classic aspirations next year. I think this horse has got a massive chance, and the 10 to 1 that is widely available is more than fair. You did have a stat for us beforehand, though, Barry, which I think people will find very, very interesting.
Well, I hope I'm right with this, but if Porta Fortuna wins this, then the trainer will take over a record from another trainer. And who are the 2 trainers involved?
See, now that I know the answer, I don't feel like it's morally okay for me to give the answer, but Tim might have a go here.
Yeah, look, I'd like to play along, but I think I do know the answer and found out beforehand as well. I'm being honest.
Tim,
he was lurking in the background, Barry. He was lurking in the background, Barry.
I can exaggerate the truth, but I can't tell a lie. All right, can I say what the stat is? Donncha O'Brien will become the youngest trainer at the Breeders' Cup, taking over from his brother Joseph.
Well done, Tim. I knew you were an expert.
How did he know? The knowledge this man possesses is just phenomenal. That is quite a stat, though, that Joseph has the record for youngest winning trainer, and now Donncha may very well usurp him. Barry, what do you make of Porta Fortuna's chances? Can she win?
Well, what I don't know here is why she's a longer price than Carla's Way. I just don't get it. I mean, she won the Grade 1 on the Saturday in fine style, going away. Looks sure to appreciate the extra yardage here. Carla's Way won a Group 2 the day before. Again, she looked really good, beating 5 rivals, but I think they were pretty much overmatched. And so Porta Fortuna, I think she's a cracker. She's one of my bets of the meeting.
Oh, wow. She also won the same race that Meditate finished second in before coming and winning here. So it's a perfect prep run. I don't understand this either, Tim. I respect Carla's why, but I can't understand why she's significantly shorter than Porta Fortuna.
No, look, I would agree with that, but I'm actually going to go with one of the locals here. I quite like Ibuku, the 3-runner. Now, if you have a look at her overall record, she's had the 5 starts. She's a twice winner, which has been the last 2, but she's won 2 from 3 on turf since they switched her over, and she had genuine excuses in that one defeat. Now, last time out, she was given plenty to do. It was in a race where I think they ran a tick under 48 for the first half. So they went along at a reasonable pace, but they didn't go silly. And she came from the back and she ran over the top of them, and she gave them windburn when she went by, and she won by a margin. Now, I know being that it's a race on the turf, we straight away look at the European fillies, but let's have a look at the pedigree of Buki. She's by Justify out of the Galileo mare. I mean, this is the sort of filly you'd expect to see in Aidan O'Brien's yard. So yeah. I think I've had a look, and I think she's about 9 to 1 at the moment, top price. And I think that's a ridiculous price. She will need a little bit of luck because she's drawn in 3, and they're going to ride it quietly. So she'll need to get the breaks when needed. But I really think she could run a heck of a race here.
You can go a little bit. No, go on, Barry.
No, interesting that all the 4 feeder races into this division, the winners from all those races have turned up here from the other side of the pond. And Buku is certainly right up there. Hard to Justify won the Miss Grillo in New York. But I like horse coming out of the race, where I'll get to in a second. The Natalma from Canada, the winner from that's turned up here, and the one from California as well. So they're all there. You know, the gang's all here. The locals have got a strong team here, and I certainly wouldn't argue too strongly with Tim on his pick, because I think she's as good as any of them.
Yeah, just again looking at the Racing Plus ratings, you'd almost think they were paying us to mention them, and they're bloody well not. But the RPR, she's top. She's highest rated of 126, ahead of Porta Fortuna on 125, and yet you're getting 10 to 1 about her. That doesn't, for a horse with that pedigree and a really impressive win in a Grade 2 last time out on good ground, and having already won on firm ground, it's mad.
And it was a big change of gear. I mean, she's got a lovely turn of foot, the sort of turn of foot you associate with a good European filly. You know, like, she's not one of these sort of American horses, just speed. Can I, outspeed you in a race? She was held up, and when the rider let her go last time, it was just really, really pretty to watch.
Aidan O'Brien obviously won this race last year. It's not a race he's been prolific in. I thought Content came in here a little bit underestimated, and I still think she's underestimated. Her RPR would be way below that of Donica's horse, for example, Porta Fortuna, and certainly of Buku as well. But I'm very taken by the fact that they considered her good enough to go for the Chesham at Royal Ascot on only her 2nd start. And she kind of dropped back a little bit after that. She was a good winner at Leopardstown. I'm sure they were disappointed when she was beaten at Leopardstown in September, and then she completely bombed out on the soft ground at the Curragh in September. But they wheeled her out a couple of weeks later, and she goes and wins under Chris Hayes as a 20 to 1 shot in a Group 3, and won really impressively that day. She powered all over them, and now she comes into a Grade 1. Given her pedigree, being a Galileo out of a Mecca's Angel, she seems ideally suited and well berthed in stall 5 as well, Barry.
Yeah, she is. I guess I'd worry a little bit about the bottom of the pedigree, Mecca's Angel being the sprinter. But again, we're in the situation with 3-year-olds. They can advance quite spectacularly at this time of year.
Yeah, and Galileo just had that incredible ability to impart not only class but also stamina into his progeny. So the fact that Mecca's Angel was a really, really fast mare, maybe, just maybe, this mile will suit her. I think she's a reasonable price at 10s, but my head is being turned here to Buku, I have to say. Barry, your final selection, Porta Fortuna?
Yeah, indeed.
And we know that Tim is going to go with the 3-horse Buku to the FanDuel Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I was talking to Luke Elder from Sky Sports Racing for TalkSport earlier on. Locked is his lock of the week. Barry, what do you make of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile?
Well, I did send you a note yesterday, where you asked me my views on these races, a little brief summary, and there were 4 lettered word on the thing I sent you. Probably not the one that people are thinking about. It was help, with lots of exclamation marks. This, I think, is the trickiest race on the first day. you give me horses here. You give me Prince of Monaco. You give me Timberlake. You give me Locked. You give me General Partner, Fierceness, Muth. You give me any of those horses, I'll make a case of why I could win. I could also make a case why I could lose. Both would sound as cogent as you like, and none of them would hold any bit of truth. It'd be politicians' answers. I'm really flummoxed on this one. I finally came down. I was actually writing this race just before I came down, and I think I've landed on Locked as well. I think.
What do you make of his run against Prince of Monaco in the best pal? I know Moff has since come out in the American Pharaoh and been a lot better, but I just can't get it out of my head how far Prince of Monaco sat behind him and how easily he went by him in the best pal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do wonder, because you look at those two. I mean, they both cost a fair old chunk of change, didn't they? Those two horses. I mean, was it Muth was $2 million early this year, and Prince of Monaco was 950,000. That's pocket change for some people, I know, but yeah, it's there are so many different confusing threads in this race. It's basically emphasising what I said, Tim. I'm looking for you for words of wisdom, mate.
Tim Carroll, take it away.
Yeah, well, look, I'm going to go with Prince of Monaco. The one thing I would say, I do kind of hope they ride him a little bit quietly. Now, the point I'll make here is he's 3 from 3, and when he won the best pal, I know it was a small field, but he sat well off the front too. And to be fair, probably went a little bit quicker than what was ideal that day. But he sustained a long run, and he went by him, and he went on to win by a margin. Now, when he won last time out, in the futurity of Del Mar in his first start in the race, both times he was ridden up on the speed, but I just liked the way he went about his business in the best pal. And another thing I do like too, we've all got our favourite jockeys, and I think Flavien Prat is an excellent rider, I really do, and he takes the ride. But again, a little bit like Barry was saying, when you look at this race, I could certainly flag up Locked. I think he's a big chance as well. But I sort of look at the betting, and at the moment, I've got it in front of me, and I won't mention firms, don't worry, Emmet, but at the moment, 11-2 top price about Prince of Monaco. I just don't see why he's such a bigger price than, say, Morpheus after what we saw in the best power 2 starts ago.
Are people with Muth, are they clinging on to the notion that he just didn't handle the surface at Del Mar, and that's the reason why he underperformed that day?
Probably, and he went a little bit quickly, but it's not like he was only a neck behind Prince of Monaco. And the other thing is too, like I said, if you watch, Flavien actually took off a long way out on Prince of Monaco. He had to sustain quite a long run that day, and I thought this will be interesting. It wouldn't surprise me if something comes back at him on the line, but they didn't. And then he came out and he wins the futurity. So I just think all things being equal on the day, I think he'd be tough to beat again.
Does the trip worry you, Tim?
No, not at all. Not especially given the way he went around in the best power. I just thought, if anything, the sort of further they went, the better he looked against Muff that day. Yeah, but having said that, I know that there's a lot of sort of, I suppose, good vibes coming out of the Bob Baffert camp about Muff, and I know he cost a lot of money. He's named after a very good friend and a client of Bob's, so he is a little bit of a sort of hype horse, and he did look good in the American Pharaoh, to be fair. But Prince of Monaco, there's no such thing as bad winning form, and he just keeps winning.
I think Prince of Monaco is a very, very fair shout. 6-1 is the best price available on this side of the pond. We'll move on to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. It's a race Aidan O'Brien has won 3 times in the last 8 years, and he's firing a lot of bullets at it this year. River Tiber, the 11-4 favourite, unquestionable. Frankie Dettori rides him. Ryan Moore, the choice, has chosen River Tiber. Unquestionable comes at a stall 8. He's a 4-1 shot, and he's also throwing in Mountain Bear, who was really good on the synthetic at Dundalk last time out. He is drawn wide, but a great opportunity for Dylan Brown McGonigal, a 12-1 shot. No Name Ever was very, very impressive the last day. This is all about the Aidan O'Brien horses, in my opinion, Barry, and I think this is not only going to be a 1-2 for Aidan. There's a very strong chance he'll have the 1-2-3 here.
What colour underwear have you got? And is it sort of white, green, and an orange, or whatever?
Well, I am wearing a Highland Reel baseball cap, the greatest Breeders' Cup Turf winner. Okay. I apologise. He's not the greatest Breeders' Turf winner. The greatest Breeders' Cup Turf winner was obviously High Chaparral. Highland Reel was the second greatest Breeders' Cup Turf hero of all time, and I won't hear another word about it. But these two are miles clear in terms of class of everything else in this race, and I do think they will fight out the finish.
That would not surprise me at all. Slight concern about River Tiber at the trip, possibly, but possibly not. Like what he did last time. He stayed behind Van Dijk, who's the best there is over here. I loved his Coventry Stakes win, and I think he's the most likely winner, and the most likely runner-up is unquestionable. This seems more straightforward than the earlier races, unless Tim's got something lurking up his sleeve.
No, I kind of agree with everything Barry has said there. I think it's worth pointing out there's been 16 runnings of this race, and you touched on it, Emmet. Aidan's won it 5 times. He won it last year with Victoria Road. He knows what type of 2-year-old to bring over. With River Tiber, I've got exactly the same concern as Barry. He steps up to the mile for the first time, but this is a really tight turning track, as we know. And I just want to make the point, it's roughly 7 furlongs in diameter of the turf track. I think it might be just slightly more than that. So they start about a furlong before the winning post. It's not really much of a run to the first turn, and I kind of think the draw in 2 is really, really handy. I think Ryan Moore, wherever he wants to put him, I think he'll be able to get him into a good spot. Whereas I think for Frankie, it's a little bit more tricky with unquestionable draw out in 8. And getting back to a horse you mentioned a moment ago too, Emmet, Van Dijk. Well, River Tiber won his first 3. He's been placed in behind Van Dijk his last 2. And for mine, personally, I just think that's the best form on offer. If he gets the mile, and I think he will on a tight turning track, I think he's the one to beat.
Yeah, I spoke to Aidan last week on the Final Furlong for both the Final Furlong podcast, but also for TalkSport. And I know he's since spoken to AtTheRaces for a stable tour. And in both of those, he emphasized that we all know there were documented issues with River Tiber before the Prix-Mornay. When he's beaten by Van Dijk, he hadn't had a clear run, and it was doubtful he'd even participate that day. Everybody seemed to think that on the back of that, I certainly did, that he might turn the form around with Van Dijk in the middle park, but he didn't have a clear run up to that race either. They had more issues with him. So you are going for excuses. I'm like the fat guy in the milkshake store clutching at straws. You are going for excuses. Excuses with them. But I'm really taken by how incredibly bullish they were about him at Royal Ascot for the Coventry Stakes. And there was that whole thing about Johnny Dineen and our good friend Simon Rowlands. Should you be using sectional times and how valuable are they? And Johnny was very much in the River Tiber camp, and the rest is history. But the quotes from Ryan Moore after that, I mean, Ryan doesn't say much, but when he does speak, it tends to pay to listen to him. He talked about how it was a 20-runner field, and River Tiber just towered over everything, and that in his opinion, at that point, he was a Dewhurst horse, and he'd have no problem going up and trip. Why they were running him over 6 furlongs still is a bit of a question mark. And now stepping up to, he's got to prove that he can actually stay this trip. He's bred to. He should be able to get a mile without any issues. The fact that Ryan Moore has chosen him, Ryan is not going to just hand Frankie Dettori a Breeders' Cup win because this is maybe Frankie's final Breeders' Cup, and it's probably not now. We all know that farewell tour went on way too long. Ryan is desperate for wins, and his record, it's very rare that he's on the wrong one. Age of Kings at Royal Ascot, he got that one wrong, but it's a rarity that he picks wrong. So for him to choose River Tiber after having said that after the Coventry, I think bodes really well for him. The draw in stall 2 should suit. He should get a really good toe into the race. He's got a really good finishing kick. And if he's come for, they seem to be very, very happy with him now, and he seems to be working quite well over there. I think he'll win, quite frankly. Unquestionable has the more proven stamina and was second in a Group 1 over 7 furlongs last time out. He was very unlucky in the Phoenix Stakes. He banged his head on the stalls and lost a shoe, and there's very reasonable excuses as to what went wrong at the Curragh. That was a really good run behind Rosslyn. Rosslyn is a top-class horse and represents that incredible listed race, the Pat Edery, where almost everything that ran on it has now won a Group 1, including him. But I think it is going to be Ryan who's in front. And if Aidan O'Brien does win this race, whichever of the 3 does so, it'll be his 6th individual Group 1 winning juvenile of the year. His 2-year-olds this season are unbelievably good. So I'm very bullish Aidan will win it. I think it will be with River Tiber. But I will definitely be doing Fox Exactus here, River Tiber, Unquestionable, and Mountain Bear. And I will also do the trifecta of some kind on those three as well. Tim, final thoughts?
Yeah, look, I like River Tiber. I think he's going to be very tough to beat. As I say, I think he'll run the mile. You point there, when you look at his pedigree, he should really run a mile on his ear. If anything, he should be more of a miler than he is a sprinter. And it's a very good point you make about Ryan Moore. There's no second guessing there. We know Ryan gets first pick, and we know he gets put on the one that they think is the most likely winner. Just quickly on Aidan O'Brien, if I could add as well, and I know we all sing his praises, and rightfully so, but when you look at the Breeders' Cup, Wayne Lucas, 20 winners, the most successful trainer at the Breeders' Cup. Bob Baffert, 18, the second most successful. Joint third, Chad Brown and Aidan O'Brien, 16 winners. I mean, it's incredible to think, and I know he's got a lot of weapons to work with, but it's incredible to think that Aidan O'Brien has had 16 winners at the Breeders' Cup.
It's extraordinary. This is the 40th running of the Breeders' Cup, and he's already on 16 winners. And it's even more impressive when you're considering the fact that these horses are being shipped over from Ireland. Yeah. He's not an Irish trainer based in New York. He's an Irish trainer based in Ireland.
And the thing is, as you would well know, the ground in America is normally pretty quick, especially when they run these races on the West Coast. It's very different to the sort of conditions they get in Ireland. So not only do you have to have a horse with the right ability, then they've got to have the right attitude. They've got to be able to travel, a little bit like Highland Real. But then you've got to find a horse that you know is going to go on these tight turning tracks that quite often are a quicker ground than anything they've ever experienced over here.
Siri, what age is the racehorse trainer Aidan O'Brien?
We'll ask an Irishman to give us the answer to that one. You've got an Englishman and Australian here, so I think the Irishman should answer that one.
I have a feeling he's 53.
I'm going to go 54.
Okay, I think he's. The reason I'm saying this is Aidan. So whatever at the Breeders' Cup, 40 years old. Royal Ascot is over 100 years old. Tim's going to Google it for us. This is the great advantage of doing this on video. Royal Ascot is over 100 years old. He's the winning most trainer in the history of Royal Ascot. He's trained more classic winners in Britain than any trainer in the history of horse racing. And he's what age, Tim?
He is, and I've only just got you, he's 54. He turned 54 on the 16th of October.
First of all,
you lost the photo there, Tim.
Yeah.
First of all, happy birthday, Aidan O'Brien. Secondly, Jesus Christ, I have to question my life decisions. I'm 41. That man is the greatest racehorse trainer in the history of this sport. He's achieved everything that can be achieved. The records he's already set, trained more Grade 1 winners, 28 Grade 1 and Group 1 winners in a single season than any other trainer. Beating his own record. Bobby Frankel then beat that record. Then Aidan O'Brien comes and beats that record as well. It's phenomenal.
Can I tell you a quick story, guys, because I think it'll impress you. I remember I was doing the, it was years ago now, I was doing the on-course for Ladbrokes at the St. Leger. So I went and approached Aidan. In fact, actually, my producer went and approached Aidan and said, do you mind doing an interview for the sponsor? He said, yep, sure, no problems at all. So I went up to Aidan, and Aidan wouldn't know me from a bar or so. And the first thing he said to me, he said, what's your name? And I said, oh, Tim Carroll. So anyway, we start the interview, and I can't remember what I asked. I think he had 3 runners in the big one. I probably asked him about those. And he answered, and straight away he said, well, Tim. And I quickly realised that the reason he asked me my name wasn't to shake my hand or something like that. It was so he could be professional in the interview. And I remember walking away from that thinking, wow, like, apart from the fact that you can train a horse, you are one classy individual.
Yeah, he's a great ambassador for the sport. We're blessed with the people we have representing it. John Gosden's an incredible speaker. Charlie Appleby speaks eloquently as well. But there's Willie Mullins, obviously, but there's few better than him, than Aidan O'Brien. It's remarkable. And the time he gives to all of us in the media. And I think the crucial thing about that is they all, and particularly Aidan, they know that the best way to attract more fans to the sport is by talking to the media, because we'll get it out there. And he gives so much time to all of us in the press. It's incredible.
And he cops a little bit of flack for saying, oh, look, this colt, we've got, he's got a great mind, he moves beautifully, he's going to be the next big thing, etc. But what do people expect him to say? Firstly, chances are it is a very good racehorse. And secondly, it's the biggest racing yard in the world. Of course, you're going to highlight their strengths. Of course, you're going to talk about them in a positive manner. And all right, you just read between the lines a little bit and you watch as their career unfolds. But it really annoys me when people say, oh, he's just going to say this is the next big thing. Well, if it's a horse that's a serious Group 1 horse, well, then it is an outstanding animal. So it kind of annoys me a little bit when he cops flack for that. And it's kind of, as you just said, what we need is we need trainers, we need jockeys, because the star of the show is the horse, right? The horse can't talk, unfortunately. So we need the players. I mean, people don't really want to hear from me. Maybe about betting they might, but they don't really want to hear me talking about a horse. They want to hear Aidan O'Brien, or they want to hear Frankie Dettori or Tom McQuan or whoever it may be. So when you get jockeys and trainers that are happy to do it, and Aidan gives a hell of a lot of his time, just because they wax lyrical a little bit, well, so what? It really annoys me when people are critical of that.
Yeah, I can understand why some people would be a little bit cynical about saying this is the best 2-year-old I've ever trained. When I mentioned Johannesburg earlier on, that famous Tom Durkin commentary, now a champion on 2 continents. Like, that was an unbeaten superstar. But the point's been made. Aidan very much lives in the moment. Also, this is a marketing game. Like, the flat is very different to our other love jumps racing where...
Aidan O'Brien is a trainer first and foremost, but he is still in the business of creating stallions and brood mares. So that's what he's going to do. Now, if he's got a colt that he does think is exceptionally good, chances are he's probably going to use a phrase, chuck a few pounds on rather than knock a few off. So I don't know why people would be critical of that. Just the fact he gives his time. Now, he might not be controversial, but goodness gracious, sometimes when we get, we've had a lot of controversy in the game over the years, and I think, we could do with a lot less controversy and maybe a few people just doing the marketing thing.
Yeah, there's plenty of controversies in the racing world anyway that we're all trying to deal with and navigate without bashing a guy for giving you his opinion and telling you what he thinks of a horse. What I think is really interesting, just to bring a close to this, is when Aidan does talk about horses like that, okay, he might hype a horse up and say, this is the greatest I've ever trained. I think he's entitled to that. I completely agree with you. But he'll also give you a piece of information that you've never heard another trainer say. I never knew anything about horses being, like, obviously horses are herd animals. I never heard any trainer, except for Aidan O'Brien, talk about George Washington the way he did, that he is the leader of the pack. And all the other horses, when they were working, he would boss his way to the front and control them. He was the leader of the herd. I'd never heard a trainer talk about that before. And George Washington was an incredibly difficult racehorse to manage. With the greatest of respect, Godolphin, if he was yours, you'd have gelded him. Like, they geld horses super fast. Aidan doesn't have that option. He's not allowed geld a horse. If that horse is not good enough for Coolmore, if Tim Carroll's going to buy him, Tim Carroll's going to buy him as a full horse, and it's your decision to geld him. They won't do that. He had to sharpen his mind and get him to focus on the job. And how he talked about Henry the Navigator adjusting to the synthetics, the way he talks about City of Troy, and the fact that they can't tire him at home. Ryan Moore talking about the fact that he couldn't pull him up that day, that he did something that no other horse that he'd ever ridden had done, couldn't pull him up. And then Aidan expanding on that and how he'd run through a brick wall for you, and everything they throw at him, they can't tire him. That's massive information that we can all use going forward. When he speaks, listen. He might very well be giving you a little bit of a marketing ploy, but there's invaluable information in there that few other trainers part ways with. We'll move on to Saturday for the big ass fans, Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Naomi Tucker's back on Monday to review the Breeders' Cup with us. She's currently shooting loads of content for NBC and the Breeders' Cup coverage. Cody's Wish, look, we all know the story by now. It's an incredible, remarkable story, and there won't be a dry eye in the house if he goes and wins. Question, though, is Barry Faulkner. First live race, ITV4, NBC, obviously, Sky Sports Racing and Racing TV on this side of the pond. Is Cody's Wish going to win the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile with basically his biggest opponents all now falling by the wayside?
Yeah, he lost the most likely practical move a couple of days ago. It does really look his to lose, and I'm not sure what price he's currently, if you can dig that out for me, but it's hard to see past him. I've been through this a few times, top and bottom. There is one fascinating runner in here, and it's from this side of the pond. That's Algiers, who finished second in a little race in Woodbine at the beginning of last month.
He's out.
He's out again, is he?
He's just come out.
Oh, okay.
Because I liked him a lot as well.
He came second to the Japanese talking horse in the classic in Dubai. I mean, I'll be staggered if Cody's Wish loses. Just looking through, I really. There's only half a dozen in that race. How many are in that race? Then there are not that many. There were 7 runners. God, very disappointing.
Yeah, it's really fallen to pieces now. I think we're down to 6.
Oh,
we're down.
okay.
I think we are. We're down to 6 runners. This is a point and shoot job for Cody's Wish now. Surely, Tim Carroll.
Well, look, I kind of hope so. He's having his last start, and I'm sure you guys know the story behind him and how he was named. It was all part of the Make a Wish Foundation and the young lad who went out there to see the horse, and they had a connection. So I think it'd be good if he did. But even if we put the sort of emotional side of it all to one side for a moment, he's a fabulous horse. He's won 10 from 15. He's a 4-time Grade 1 winner. He's comfortably got the best figures in the race overall. As we've just mentioned, I was very interested in Algiers as well. Practical moves. Sadly, we know what happened there. And for mine, they were his 2 biggest dangers. And now we've got a small field because he's a hold-up type. When he won this last year, he sort of ran over the top of them. But now that he's got a small field, that's going to, at least it should, play into his hands as well. And apparently I've heard he's working very well in the mornings, which is always a good sign.
Yeah, the gallop reports about him have been very good.
They've been excellent. The Clockers report and Daily Racing Form this morning, he got a strong mention. It is. I mean, he's only been beaten once, and that was when he tried 9 furlongs. It'll be a mega surprise if he loses.
And he's massively clear on Racing Post ratings and most of the speed figures in America as well. Cody's Wish, banker material, 13 to 8 on, 6 to 4 on. That's the best price we're getting.
That would be a watch. It's a watching race. That's a race to be talking about watching how the track's running. That's the race to have an idea from that point.
Yeah.
It's kind of, if he wins, it's the feel-good story, isn't it? It's the feel-good story of the meeting. If he wins on his final start with everything that's gone on around the horse with young Cody, it's just one of those sort of ones, even if you don't have a bet and you see him win, you'll be pretty happy.
Yeah, well said, Tim. Definitely a race to just kick back, watch, enjoy, and crack open a few cold ones to wipe away the tears, as there won't be a dry eye in the house if he goes and wins. The Maker's Mark Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Turf. This is a race I will definitely be having a bet in, and I think the market is completely wrong here, because Inspiral is favourite for Frankie Dettori and John and Thady Gosden, and I don't think she should be. I think Warm Heart absolutely should be. She's the best 3-year-old filly in Europe. She's a dual Group 1 winner. Both of those wins came under James Doyle on her most recent starts, the Yorkshire Oaks, and then again on Arc Trials Day when she was way too good in the Vermeil. I'm pretty certain Aidan O'Brien and Ryan Moore will win this for the 2nd consecutive year after Tuesday's victory last year. Tim Carroll.
Yeah, look, I'm going to go for a little bit of value just simply because I'm going to be price sensitive. At the moment, they've got in Italian, the American mare. She's at double figures, which I think is ridiculous. She was runner-up in this last year, the Tuesday, so we know she's a pretty good filly. She's won 7 from 13. She's been runner-up on 5 occasions as well, and she's picked up the bronze once, so she's never not hit the frame in her entire career. She's a quick filly. She'll jump out. She'll look to lead, so the draw in 1 looks perfect. And yeah, I'm having a look at the moment. You can look at your own screen there and tell us, Emmet, but I can get double figures about her. And especially for each way players, I think she could be an each way play. In Spiral, there's got to be a little bit of a query about the trip. And then you've got Warm Heart, who I think is the best of the Europeans in this. And I know that a few of my friends in Ireland are kind of saying she's the banker of the meeting. But at the prices, I'd happily play the local filly in Italian.
Yeah, I'm surprised in Italian is that big. 8 to 1 is the biggest price I'm seeing, but I think somebody is letting you have 10s. How much they'll let you have on, I'm not entirely sure, Tim. That's too big a price for Chad Brown's mare. She's got a huge chance here, the daughter of Dubawi. And as you said, 2nd in the race last year. I really love Warm Hearts, Barry. I think she's ideally suited to this. When she won the Yorkshire Oaks, that was on good to firm ground, so the surface isn't going to be a problem for her. And we know she will stay. That's the question mark about Inspiral. When she's good, she's very, very good. But is she going to be good enough over a mile 2?
I mean, I think if she's going to stay a mile 2, this is the track to do it on. I mean, the first quarter of a mile is downhill on the turf course there, so it's not a difficult 10 furlongs. So if she's never going to do it, this is the place to do it. But I'm absolutely with Tim on this. I'm already on it in Italian, just checking. I I got 4 teams in Italian earlier in the week, or maybe last week, just from the point that doesn't seem to be a huge amount of speed in this race, and she's done this in the past, just rides them to death on the front end, and it'd be a very tricky task for the jockeys behind her, because she's a talented mare, and Tim pointed out she's got all the attributes. We talked about the prices that you said. You've got a 10 to 1 currently still, 8 to 1, whatever it is.
8 to 1 is the best price I'm seeing now.
I can actually see 14 to 1 with one firm.
What?
Moment, yep. Unless what I'm looking at's wrong, but I can see 14 to 1 with one firm.
Yeah, you have to look going back into that. How long ago? Going to the individual firms' accounts, you'll see them on the odds comparison sites. And you go into the account, the actual company. Is that? Oh no, it's 6 to 1 now, whatever. Anyway, but she's 4 to 1 on the morning line, which I think is that's too short. I want back at 4 to 1, but you've got the prices.
Well, the thing is, too, if you're looking at a betting angle here, I must admit, I'm not really an each-way player. I'm not saying it's not sensible, but it just doesn't tickle my fancy. But Warm Heart, for obvious reasons, and Spiral, for obvious reasons. But those two aside, who would in Italian fear? Absolutely no one in this race on a form. When we get back to Inspiral stepping up in triple, I do agree with what you're saying there, Barry, as well. If she's going to run 10 furlongs, it will certainly be on this track. The other thing about Inspiral too, if you look at the form on Good to Firm, now that's probably, Good to Firm over here is probably what she's going to get on the weekend. Her record on Good to Firm over here reads 1-1-1-1-2-1. So she'll certainly love the ground. Warm Heart's got there's kind of the opposite problem in that she's dropping back from 1.5 miles, which just worries me a little bit, because it's not just her last one. I think it's her last 3 runs, is it? That she's gone over 1.5 miles. So
last 4.
Last 4, is it? Thank you. I think you've got to go back to May, don't you? The last time she went over 1.25 miles. And you've got to respect the European fillies, and they both bring such a strong level of form. But I just think in Italian, this race, she's going to get on the front from the low draws. She's been there before. She's done it. She's in her own backyard. I think there's a lot in her favour.
Yeah, I think it's a good point to make about Warm Heart dropping back to 2 furlongs. That's not really being mentioned a whole lot. The one thing I'd say in defense of her in that regard is that run in May over 10 furlongs, she beat Blue Stocking. And I remember reviewing that race on TalkSport and on the final furlong. And everybody I spoke to was making excuses for Blue Stocking and how she was the better horse and she was unlucky and she'd prove that she would have her revenge. And she just didn't. Warm Heart was much the best. Now, Blue Stocking has done nothing wrong for that form. She was very unlucky in the Irish Oaks when somehow Ryan Moore managed to galvanize Save the Last Dance when she hit 1,000 to 1 in running to get up and win. And she was pretty unlucky the other day in the Champions Stakes, or Champions Day in the Filly Mare Turf as well. So her win over 10 furlongs at least does have a bit of substance to it, Warm Heart.
Yeah, look, it does, but again, it just worries me a little bit, especially now she's going over a sharp 10. And look, horses are all very different. You've got to treat them as individuals. But I remember when Aidan O'Brien took So You Think to the Arc, and he kind of said the following year when the horse bounced back at Royal Ascot, he said, I had to pour the work into him. He said, I'm surprised he even survived it, just to ensure that they could step him up to 1.5 miles. Now, I'm not saying they'd have to change Warm Heart's regime in the same dramatic style, but if she's been going over 1.5 miles on testing tracks over here, and now she's dropping to a sharp track, and Aidan will be aware of that. It is a sharp 10 furlongs. I would imagine the opposite effect. They probably had to lighten off a little bit, but you're still going to have to train her a little bit differently. So I'm not trying to knock her at all. I think she's a wonderful filly, and I get it. But when I'm looking at sort of around 5 to 2 Inspiral, 5 to 2 Warm Heart, and depending on what we believe, anywhere from 6 to 1 to 14 to 1 in Italian, I've got to take the big price about in Italian.
Yeah, I think in Italian is a hard one to get away from. She's definitely going to be in the exacta for me. With Warm Heart, I'm pretty bullish that they're going to be 1-2. I think Inspiral will be showing up here, and hey, I'll have to eat humble pie and send an apology text to Thady Gosden if I'm wrong about that. But I think it will be a familiar scene, a repeat of last year. The Tuesday colours and in Italian both crossing the line together, but this time it's Warm Heart who's in front. And just final note on Warm Heart, this has been the plan since she won on Arc Trials Day. Despite the fact that Coolmore didn't really have a horse for the Arc, because asking Continuous to win an Arc after winning the St. Leger was a very, very bold thing to do. St. Leger winners obviously have a horrible record in that race. Auguste Rodin was never going for that race. and yet neither was Warm Heart, and nor was she ever in contention for Champions Day. It was always about here and this race. So Aidan, not concerned about going back to 10 furlongs. Again, I asked him about that on the final furlong last week. He didn't really have any concerns. It is a very good point to make, though, and that 8-1 about In Italian might just be a little bit too big. The Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Sprint. Boys, I need your help on this one, because I don't have a clue. Some would say I don't have a clue full stop, but I definitely don't for this race. Goodnight Olive is the even money favourite. Is she a good thing, Tim?
Yeah, I'd have to say so. I think so. She won this race last year when she had the brilliant Echo Zulu back in second. She was actually beaten by that filly last time out in the same race she won leading into this race last year. But the thing is, if you look at the Equibase speed figures, she ran a career best last time when she was beaten. And look, beside that one defeat earlier in the year when she was very unlucky, it was genuine excuses. That's been her only defeat since her debut as a 2-year-old over 2 years ago. Now, she's a high-class filly. I think she's been exceptionally well campaigned this year as well, and I think she'll take a lot of holding out here.
Barry, I think you're with Goodnight Olive as well.
I am. I think the thing Tim said she was unlucky at a defeat behind Matarea at Churchill Downs. Unlucky really does not cover it. If you think you've got an absolute certainty who cannot be beaten, have a look at the replay of this race. I've never seen a horse so bottled up in a race all the way through the stretch. Irregularities have got absolutely nowhere to go. The only way you could get past was either go over the rail and go through the inside, or climb over a couple of horses and try and get the outside. You will never see a jockey more bottled up, and she never got a run at all. It was unbelievable. I implore everybody, go and look at it. If you think you've got a cert, somebody says, well, these things like this sometimes happen, and that's the only time she's been beaten, and he won't do that again. And again, it's going to be, this is a falling off the chair moment if she gets beaten.
Point and shoot job for Goodnight Olive, and we're all falling off chairs if she does get turned over. The FanDuel Breeders' Cup Mile is over, obviously, a mile. Surprise, Shahryar. Mauj, the 1,000 guineas winner, who came back with a success in Keeneland earlier last month, I should say. We're into November now. That was on the 14th of October. Oisin Murphy went over for the ride, and of course will be on board again. 3-1 shot. Songline for the Japanese is a 7-2 shot. Master of the Seas may very well be the big danger, and in the same ownership as the favorite. A 6-1 shot. William Buick and Charlie Appleby. Again, it's been a tough season for Charlie Appleby, but this very well could be a redemption moment. And Kalina, winner on Arc weekend against Kinross, who kind of franked the form with a big run on Champions Day. 7-1 shot. Barry, I think you're very keen on a horse here.
I am. Songline was being targeted at this race last year, and there was a sort of hiccup along the way, and she was unable to take part. But there was a big word for her for that race. And the preparation this year, everything I'm reading is targeted at one race, this race, and she's the one for me.
Tim.
Yeah, she's the one that actually really worries me. She's won a couple of grade ones earlier in the season over the mile in Japan, which puts her in the top echelon of milers in Japan, and that makes her a serious player here. But I'm going to stick with Marge. I was actually on it stateside when she won the Queen Elizabeth Cup last time, and I thought that was a really impressive return. It was her first run in over 5 months. She went over 9 furlongs, i.e. beyond the mile for the first time. She took a right old tug. I thought, well, she's going to fold late on here, but she kept binding. Now, I'd like to think that that's going to knock the edge off her a little bit, because she was a little bit keen in that. I like the fact they've gone for the mile, because she's naturally quick, which will help her here. I'll get back to that point over the mile here at Santa Anita, sort of a furlong and a bit before the first bend, and she's obviously going to be on the front end somewhere. I think if you had to nominate one horse who was entitled to improve the most from their prep run to race day at the entire meeting, she's the one I'd nominate. I think she'll take a decent step forward, and I think she's going to be awfully tough to beat here. But the Japanese filly, Songline, does worry me. I think, and Barry might be able to correct me, I think she normally posies up in about mid-division over in Japan. Now, if that's the case, she's probably going to have to make up a little bit of ground on Marge. But as I said, I thought she was really, really good first up, Marge, and I'm quite keen on her here.
Are you any worried at all about the fact that this is just 3 weeks after that, and she had a plenty of tough race there? Whether she'll the dreaded bounce, the recoil.
Look, I mean, you've got to work, because we're not there working with her. We don't know. I mean, it could be the other way. If anything, she was so keen. I'd like to think that we'll just sort of calm her down a little bit, because she did run fresh last time out. I know people talk about the second up bounce, but unless you've got a horse that's notoriously bad second up, I kind of have to ignore it, because if you sit here and think, well, hang on, she might bounce, well, then she might come out and improve 6 pounds as well. So, which I think, technically speaking, because it's not like she had 5 months off that was designed, she had 5 months off after a problem. So my take on it would be, if anything, she is certainly entitled to come on leaps and bounds after that run.
Yeah, and she's a half.
Bounce, because the one thing with the bounce is always, does the horse run up to or better than a previous high rating? I.e., if a horse has come back with a run like that and is actually just below the sort of figures she was showing previously, then yeah, we'll go with it. But I don't have the Racing Post rating, so I don't know how they're rating that particular run, which might inform me as to how I would approach her. But that race was interesting. I think Tim made the good point about it being 9 furlongs. I mean, she dug in brilliantly when she was challenged. I mean, she really wanted it, and so she's got that, you know, that winner's mentality as well. So if it comes to a scrap, you'd expect her to get stuck in. No surprise if she wins, and I think it is a very interesting race. This.
Yeah, I think they gave her the same rating as she got for winning the Guineas. When she beat Tahira, I'm pretty sure they kept her at 118. And in the context of this race, they've given her a Racing Post rating of 136, which is just behind Ownership Companion, Master of the Seas on 138, Songlands on 137, Gia Romantico 136. There's a couple of things about it. She's a half to a dual Breeders' Cup winner in modern games, and to a certain extent, modern news as well. It wasn't quite as good, but she's definitely bred for the job. She was. I thought she didn't really get the credit for that 1,000 Guineas win, because Dermot Weld had been on Nick Luck's show, the Nick Luck Daily, talking about how everything hadn't gone swimmingly with Tahira, and I think she said she was 2 weeks off in terms of work. Whether or not that's true, I mean, I don't doubt Dermot Weld at all there, but she was kept to fillies races and was the dominant filly in Europe in Mage's absence. It would have been fascinating to see those two clash again. This is Mage's first run against the boys, and there is the potential of the bounce factor as well. I mean, it's a real enigma, the bounce. Is it true? Is it not? There are plenty of horse people who will tell you it very much is a thing, but it's impossible to know how it's going to affect. You just have to you have to bear all of that in mind when you're looking at a 3-1 shot, and I can't quite get that out of my head. I'm a big fan of Mage, and when Said Bin Saror was talking about going for the Filly Mare Turf, I was shaking my head saying, no, you've got to come for the mile. And now that she is here, I'm finding myself going a little bit lukewarm on her. Tim, you've almost talked me back in to the Mage camp, but there's something about her that's stopping me from getting stuck in at 3-1, and I can't quite. It's not really rational. I can't quite get away. Master of the Seas he's just been screwed by the draw, really, hasn't he, Barry?
Yeah, it's not a great slot to be in.
Getting back to March, if you want to talk about figures, and Barry will appreciate this, Equibase put 119 on a win last time. I think she's run very, very well, all things considered. And as I keep saying, if anything, I think she should be lengths better on the weekend.
Yeah, you were doing that broadcast with Peter T. Fornatel, our good friend, who's been doing some great work on the In the Money Players podcast. And I was very taken with Maj that night. I was very taken with the runner-up, Lindy, as well. We didn't mention her in the other race. I think she's got a fair all each way chance. But you've pulled me back in, Tim. I'm back on board the Maj train. Let's go. Oisin Murphy, friend of the show, to get the job done. A songline for you, Barry?
Yes. All
right. The Breeders' Cup Distaff. Grade 1 over 1 mile and 1. The favorite is Idiomatic for Brad Cox and Florent Carew. 9-4. Yes, we'll go with that pronunciation. Thanks very much. Adair Manor for Bob Baffett. 9-2 shot. Clarier, a horse we were talking about last year, an 8-1 shot. Who are you with, Barry Faulkner?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I mean, Idiomatic is the now horse. I mean, this time last year, she'd only won a maiden. And then she picked up some bits and pieces races on the synthetic strip at Turfway Park. A little stake race there. Then she came second in a grade 2 at Belmont. And since then, she's won 4 graded stakes. handled in a very old-fashioned way, as I've written somewhere else, by Brad Cox, a group through grade 3, a grade 2, and then she tries a couple of grade 1s and wins them by a decent margin each time. Not me beating many rivals, but she's definitely the now horse. The other one you mentioned there, Clairiere, I mean, she's the real puzzle in this race. You know, did reasonably well, won the Ogden Phipps, a grade 1 in June, finished second to Nest in a funny race in just 4 runners at Saratoga, and then ran like an absolute drain behind Idiomatic last time in the personal ensign. So what do we do with her? I mean, you know, she was a head behind the winner last year in this race, Malathat, I think, they won it, and that filly turns up. She'll win this, but that last run was just so abysmal, and I'm hearing nothing to excuse it. But here we are, she's running again in the race, so they must be hopeful, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose the hope for us is that you're getting a reasonable price up at her now. She's an 8-1 shot, but God, it's hard to fancy her on the back of that. Those last 2 runs, but particularly the last day at Saratoga, she was awful, Tim.
Yeah, she was, but it was on a sloppy track. It was 71 days ago, and I can't believe that Stephen Asmussen, the trainer of his quality, would be sending her around, given her a record, because she's done plenty already. She's an old girl, if you like, 5 years of age. I can't believe he'd be sending her around if he wasn't happy with her. I think when you look at her overall profile, the first thing to say is she's got this equal-based speed figure of 117. Now, that's 4 points clear of anything in this race. But the thing that really takes my eye, as far as Clairiere goes, is she is a stretch runner. And there is, once again, a lot of speed in this race. For whatever reason, the Distaff, it always seems to be run quickly. And if you look at the overall record of the Distaff, 15 runnings, only 1 leader has won it. I think if she's back anywhere near her best, I think she's going to get the perfect race set up. And I think, given that she's an each-way price as well, look, for me, she's the one I'd back. There's a lot of pace here, and I can just see them, as we've seen so many times in the Distaff. I can just see those right at the front, just chopping at each other and destroying each other's race. And I know you've got to take a leap of faith after her last run, but I like to think she just had an off day. I think it was the slop. You know, as I say, she's a 5-year-old now. She might be getting a little bit funny, but I just don't think Steve would have her here unless he was happy with her. And she will get a race run to suit here, and I'm prepared to give her another chance.
Yeah, just going on that speed point, Tim's dead right. I mean, you've got Idiomatic wins off the lead, Adair Manor wins off the lead, Search Results led all the way last time. It's not, I don't think it's quite as spectacular as 2 years ago when there was that unbelievably dramatic pace collapse when I'd backed Dunbar Road at 20-0 in the week, and that Japanese poke came and nicked me right on the line. My therapist said I will get over it in another 2 years or so.
That doesn't sound like your therapist was right.
But this is, no, that point is exactly it. That she's the deep closer, and the race is set up. They've come along 8-1. You know, I'd kick myself all up and down the house here if I didn't have a few pounds on that one.
I'm starting to be persuaded to put this horse into some sort of elaborate Lucky 63 at this point. At 8-1, Clairiere, I think I am being persuaded here. And again, she does have very, very high speed figures and very, very high ratings as well. If she's back to her best, she was only beaten a short head in this race last year, to be fair, then 8-1 is probably too big.
It was a good renewal last year too.
It was.
Yeah, cracking. Better renewal last year than this one, I'd say.
On paper at this stage, yes.
To the race of the night, race of the weekend, the Longines Breeders' Cup Turf. Auguste Rodin, the 11-4 favorite. Mostahdaf, second highest rated horse in the world, 3-1. King of Steel, 6-1. Frankie Dettori for Roger Varian. Onesto, placed in the arc, 15-2, up to the mark. They could have gone for the mile. They come for this race instead. An 8-1 shot. Tim Carroll, this is the race of the night.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people saying it's the second best race we've seen on turf this year behind the arc. I'm not sure if that's true, but it's obviously a very good renewal. A fascinating renewal, and all of those you've mentioned I've got a lot of respect for. But look, last time I had a look, Shahryar, the Japanese 5-year-old, he was 16-1 earlier in the day. I must admit I haven't had a look in the last couple of hours. Now, to be fair, when you look at his form, there's sort of peaks and troughs there. But this is a horse that's been placed in a couple of Japan Cups. He's a Derby winner. He's a Shima Classic winner. Now, I know that he was disappointing last time out, which was 76 days ago. But he subsequently had a wind up. They found a problem there. And I think that would go a long way to explaining that. I think he comes here as well. He comes after a 2.5-month break, which is exactly what he did before he won the Derby. He won the Shima Classic. I think he was off for about 4 months before the Shima Classic. He's also quite versatile tactically. So I would think from the low draw, they'll probably have him pretty handy. Again, I could make a pretty strong case for a few of these, and conversely, I could put a knock on a few of these. I'm happy to take on King of Steel. I'll explain that in a moment, but I just think at the price, I think he's ridiculously well priced at 16 to 1, and I think he'll run a hell of a race from the inside.
It's funny because I was looking at him today extensively, and I agree with you. I think he's going to run a huge race. It's easy to forget how short a price he was initially for the Prince of Wales at Royal Ascot last year. He was 3 to 1.
And he didn't run that badly, and to be fair, he came all the way over to Europe, and he didn't run that badly. And I know you could say that he disappointed in the end, but he's a proven traveller. He's gone to Dubai and he's won, so we know he travels. The other thing I would say about the Japanese too, they don't take their horses away just so they can have a party. They're quite concentrated on it. And I know that he bombed badly last time, but he as I say, he's had a wind up, and I can't believe for 1 second they take this horse to America for the Breeders' Cup unless they were very, very happy with where he's at. When you look at his overall record, when you look at the way that this race maps, I think 16 to 1 is nearly insulting.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. That Prince of Wales Stakes last year was an absolute farce, except for one horse and one jockey, Shane Cross, who was chef's kiss. Oh, yep. That was absolute magic on State of Rest.
And he was only beaten over 3 lengths. It's not like he was annihilated.
Yeah, he lost very little in defeat, but also he drifted like the proverbial just before the off. So they clearly, something wasn't quite right because that betting market was telling you how he was going to run before he even did. I'm very intrigued by the fact that they've brought him over here, being beaten, being lapped last time out, and yet you're still considering bringing him over for a Breeders' Cup Turf and then doing it. He's a player. He wouldn't be a win bet, but he's definitely going to be in the trifecta for me. You were talking about King of Steel. I'll stay with you before I go to Barry. Why are you against him?
Look, I don't like the way this race is going to shape for him. He's drawn out in 11. I think he's going to, I don't think they've got any choice. They'll have to hold on to him. Now, he's kind of, in a way, he's got a similar profile to Yabir. Yabir won this race a couple of years ago as a 3-year-old. He's a big lad like King of Steel, and William Buick rode him from the back, gave him a great ride, and he ran over the top of him. So we know it can happen. But with all respects to Yabir, I think this is a lot better renewal. Now, at some point, even if they run it long, and this should be run at a proper gallop, I'd like to think, even if they do, at some point, King of Steel is going to have to go by a lot of good horses to win this race. And on top of that, let's not forget, he had an absolute gutbuster at Ascot, and that was only 14 days ago. I really like the horse, like a lot of people, given what he did in the Derby, given we hadn't seen him for so long, got there too early, no fault of the riders, just the way the race worked out. I've liked him ever since that day. Big fan, but I don't like him in this spot.
Yeah, I like him a lot as well. I had kind of turned on him a little bit in that I began to think he will win a Group 1, but he'll win it next year. I thought this was going to be just too much for him this season. And I was labeling him Westover 2.0, but less good. This is the training performance of all training performances if he comes out and wins this. Like, that performance on Champions Day was absolute magic. He was the only horse to close from off the gallop, to come from off the pace to win. He was the best horse on the day, and he was the best winner we saw on the day as well. And Frankie was, again, chef's kiss. It was a magnificent ride and a terrific performance from him. But that was a gutbuster, Tim. That was a brutal run on soft ground. And now you expect him to come over to California 14 days later and take on some of the best horses in the world and win. It's too much in my mind.
Yeah, you're right. And it was a gutbuster. And with Bay Bridge running well below par, I mean, if you look at the others there, with all respects, it's nowhere near as good a race as what this is.
Yeah, and I believe the plan was Breeders' Cup Classic if he was beaten in the Champion Stakes or if he was scratched. After he won the Champion Stakes, then it was all about the turf. But I don't like him at all in this position. Barry, what's your view on the Breeders' Cup Turf and specifically King of Steel?
Well, my view is exactly as spoken by you, a wise and erudite gentleman. This is the biggest, the strongest field he's ever faced, and kudos if he does it, but I can't really see it. A little bit of context for the point Tim was making about the Japanese horse on the inside. In Dubai earlier in the year, he finished 5th in the Shima Classic. The horse in front of him, 4th, was Mostahdaf, who was a length in front. Mostahdaf is currently a 3-1 shot. Shahryar is a 16-1 shot. As Tim pointed out, this is you've got to back horses like that, so certainly be carrying some in mind. Because I think Mostahdaf is the most likely winner of this race. I love his profile. He's a proper racehorse. I like horses, but I like late developers that run as entires at 5. They're not doing it when they're young. They're not shuffled off to stud. They're allowed to mature and develop. And this lad's matured and developed into one of the very best. And I think is the likely winner, most likely winner. But say you're looking at the prices: 3-1 him, 16-1 the lad on the inside. You've got to back the lad on the inside as well if you fancy Mostahdaf, which I do. Auguste Rodin, I don't know what to make of him. Some bits of his form are like he's like what Americans call an oxo horse, not quite where you get a good and a duff and a good and a duffin. He's had, he's running the Guineas was forgettable. Then he wins the Derby, wins the Irish Derby. Then he's running the King George, was forgettable. Oof. You'll have to remind me if there was any reasons for that. And then he comes back and wins the champion at Leopardstown. So I don't know what to make of him. Quite capable of winning it clearly, but I'm not sure about the reliability.
There was no excuse given. The only thing they could come up with was he's developed an aversion to traveling on the day. Because it's easy to forget that the Derby was run. I know it's easy to forget that the Derby being run at 1:30. So just if you don't know, any horse that Aidan O'Brien runs in Europe wakes up at Ballydoyle that morning and goes to bed at Ballydoyle that night. They all fly out to race in the UK in the morning. Same for France. The only way that changes is when they go international, extreme international, Dubai, America. And Aidan changed things for the Breeders' Cup last year. He had a bit of a barren spell at the Breeders' Cup, and he's constantly evolving. So they sent horses out a good couple of days earlier last year, let them settle in, and obviously they tore the place to pieces last year. They did the same thing at Dubai, and they're going to do the same thing again this year. The horses have arrived well ahead of time. Interviewing Aidan before the Derby, after that bomb out in the Guineas, I thought he had I'd backed him at 16-1, 14-1, 12-1, and 10-1 for the Derby, and I almost ripped up all those digital dockets because I thought he had no chance. How is he going to turn around a 28 length defeat, 22 length defeat behind Caldine in the 2000 Guineas within 28 days? Aidan O'Brien, that's how. It was a remarkable achievement to get him to win, but they shipped him over on either the Wednesday night or the Thursday morning. So he was in the UK for a couple of days because the Derby was being run at 1:30. They didn't want to take a risk that he'd somehow miss the race. And for the King George, they flew him out that morning. So the theory was he's developed an aversion to traveling on the day. I don't know if that's the case. I don't think anybody does, really. The fact is he was woeful there. He was woeful in the Guineas, but he was brilliant in the Irish Champion Stakes. And that was a really strong performance. And every single run of this horse's life, with the exception of one, he's been favourite. And the only time he wasn't was the Derby. So the lads must have been a little bit nervous that he wasn't going to be quite himself. And yet he managed to go and win. Every other time he's been sent off favourite. And I think this race sets up perfectly for him. Mostahdaf is clearly a brilliant horse. I got him badly wrong after Royal Ascot. I thought it was a bit of a fluke, to be completely honest about it. And looking back on it, I'm still perplexed by that performance. I think my line on TalkSport was, where the hell did that come from? Because he never suggested anything like that in his life. And you go back through the form of that race, it's woeful. Sir Michael Stout, pop quiz, hot shots. How many winners has Sir Michael Stout had in the UK in 2023?
Oh, okay. Not sure. It wouldn't be that many.
Barry?
Not for me. I'm following American racing here, so I'll leave that to Tim.
27.
I was going to say 25. I didn't want to in case I embarrassed myself, but yeah, okay. Not a shot.
27.
He's a bit more about quality than quantity these days, isn't he?
Oh, that's bad. For a trainer of his caliber, there's something not right at that yard. I couldn't tell you what it is. There's obviously something not right at Charlie Appleby's yard as well. Look, the reason I mention that is because Baybridge was second favorite in that race, and he just did not perform at all. And that's been a theme for him this season. My Prospero was a Group 2 horse. AtTheRaces was retired on the back of a defeat in a 4-runner race at odds on in Group 2 company at Newmarket on his next start. The thing I can't get my head around is Luxembourg. Luxembourg came into it having won a Group 1. He's beaten 4 lengths. And if you use him as a guide, then Mostahdaf's away and gone. Because how can Auguste Rodin beat Mostahdaf when Luxembourg got within half a length of him, but Mostahdaf was able to bury Luxembourg by 4 lengths at Royal Ascot? Ascot produces some funny results from time to time, and I think that was a funny result. And then you get the Juvenile International, and that's where I was eating humble pie, because I was adamant that Paddington would do him that day. And they drastically changed tactics. Out they went, I had to eat humble. Lizzie Kelly and I both had to eat humble pie on air. But I look back on that. Paddington was beaten. Go on.
I was just going to say, I was actually all over the winner that day. I'm not trying to give myself crap. I put it up online too. I took out the TriCast like 50 times. I mean, it paid $2 bob, but I really liked him. Can I make a point about Mostahdaf? Okay, he arrives here after a break of 73 days. Now, have a listen to this. First start in the race, he wins. The next time he has a break, 92 days. Comes back, wins. Next time he has a break, 195 days, wins. Next break, 58 days, wins. Next break was 146 days, comes out, wins. Next break, 88 days, wins. Next break, 63 days, was at York, wins. This horse loves a layoff.
I'm beginning to see a pattern.
Yep. For mine, he's the pick of the Europeans. I really think so. Look, the draw could be a little bit tricky again. The 9, we'll just have to, I hope Jim Crowley can get him into a good spot. But all things being equal on the day, and obviously I'm going to back the Japanese horse because I think it's ridiculous the way he's priced. He should be at least half the price. But if you're asking me what's the horse that I think is the most likely winner, if my life depended on it, I would back Mostahdaf. I just think, and I rode a lot of horses like this when I was riding. There's just a lot of horses, for whatever reason, they've got to have a break between their runs. And some of them might only be 3 weeks, some of them it's 2 months. And I think this fellow is exactly like that, because when you look at his first up record, you wouldn't find a better first up record unless you were talking about a Frankel or a Black Caviar horse that's undefeated. It's incredible how good this horse is first up.
Yeah, that's a very valuable point to make as well. I wonder about that Juvenile International form. I have a feeling Paddington had just come to the end of his tether, and it was just another step a little bit too far. Look, he was brilliant that day. If he can replicate that here, then of course he wins. And on the line through Luxembourg, as I said, if you trust that Royal Ascot form, and if you think if you think that form is real, then he's probably going to win. There's a slight concern about him over this distance. I have a slight concern about the fact that he would have been trained for the Champion Stakes and then he's missed that race, hasn't had race conditions, and then flies all the way to California to compete in a mile 4 turf race, and the fact that he's drawn in stall 9. I'm happy enough to skip him. The way this race is going to set up, I think, is perfect for Auguste Rodin. You've got Broome in there, who's got no chance of winning it, but he'll do a job. You've got Bolshoi Ballet, who comes into this on the back of a huge run in Grade 1 company at Saratoga last time out, where he finally, in the Sword Dancer, began to actually fulfill the potential that they thought he had. I'm amazed he's still a Coolmore horse, to be honest. But that was a really strong performance. Both of those horses will be in there running on their merits, but I'm sure they will also be advantageous to how this race will be run for Auguste Rodin as well. I think this is perfect for him. Trip is ideal. Ground should be no problem. You've got Rhyme. This race reminds me an awful lot of the 2003 running, which is the best running of this race in my mind. High Chaparral and Johar dead heating with Falbrav back in 3rd. Mostahdaf is the Falbrav. Auguste Rodin is the High Chaparral. And Up to the Mark is the Johar. And I think Up to the Mark, I think Todd Pletcher has looked at this race in the similar way to how my mind is working. That Mostahdaf maybe is a little bit flattered. I'm not telling you he's a bad horse, and you can never take away what he did. That win in the Prince of Wales was amazing. That win at York, he was the best horse. He was better than Paddington, and he was better than his stable companion Nashwa. But maybe, just maybe, he's going to be vulnerable over this 12 furlongs. King of Steel will definitely be vulnerable after a really hard run last time out, and I will eat humble pie if he goes and wins. So if those two are vulnerable, suddenly this becomes a much more open race. And going for a Breeders' Cup Mile that looked like a lesser race and an easier option, maybe the Mile 4 is going to be a better fit for Up to the Mark. I think Auguste Rodin, Up to the Mark, to a certain extent, Onesto, who put in a huge performance behind Ace Impact in the Arc the other day. And horses, French runners have got a terrific record at the Breeders' Cup, but certainly Arc horses coming to the Breeders' Cup Turf have got a great record. So my box exacta and my trifecta is going to be Auguste Rodin, Onesto, Up to the Mark, and I'm going to stick in Shahryar as well. And if those four end up fighting at the finish with Mostahdaf, King of Steel, falling out the back of the telly, then it will be gravy dripping everywhere, and I will be drinking Moet on my way to fly out to California to go and celebrate with the lads.
Look, I just want to throw up a counter argument about Mostahdaf last time out and saying Paddington was coming to the end of his tether and he only just won. And that's all valid and that's all fair enough. But let's not forget he was ridden completely the opposite to what he was at Ascot. Frankie said afterwards he had to ride him upside down to beat Paddington. So if anything, I know it wasn't much of a margin. I know it was a small field, and you can make the argument that Paddington was coming to the end of his tether, given he's had a pretty tough campaign. But I think you've got to give the horse a lot of credit. At Ascot, he was held up. He runs over the top of them. Whereas at York, he was very much a pace horse there. And I think he's a very, very good horse. He made all at York, and that's no mean feat. The other thing is too, the York race. I know it's a flat track, but it's 10 and a bit furlongs, isn't it? The Juvenile International. And this is a soft mile and a half.
Yeah.
Compared to Europe.
That was something I was thinking about today as well. Why change tactics? He was so good. Like,
I think Frankie said he thought he had to ride him that way to beat Paddington. He didn't think he could sit too far off Paddington and run over the top of him. I think that's what he said in the interview afterwards.
But Paddington wasn't the second highest rated horse in the world at the time. Mostahdaf was. So, Paddington was favourite. We, like us mug punters, I had backed Paddington and was getting stuck into him. But if you believe your horse is as good as the ratings are saying, then why are you changing tactics to go and beat Paddington? Just go out and run your race the way you want. Look, maybe there's a very possibility. There's a great thing we say on the Final Furlong podcast. Don't complicate your mind. And it may very well be the case that I have completely complicated my mind, that I have read way too much into this, and I've fallen down some Alex Jones tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. The psychic vampires are stealing the souls of your children. And I just think that this Mostahdaf form is a little bit overrated. Clearly, you both like him, and it's more than likely I'm going to be eating humble pie at the end of this. But he's a 3-1 shot.
Yeah, I feel like
sorry, Barry, you go.
I feel like a judge here. I've been listening to the prosecution and the defence, and I'm I've got to make my mind up. And Emmet, you've not persuaded me. The case goes to Tim.
All right, take it away, Tim.
All I was going to say, I think this is, this is a game of inches and everything counts. He had to give Paddington £7. The 3-year-olds at the Breeders, he's only got to give him 4. Now, I know it's only £3, but if he wins by a lip, that £3 important.
Yeah, and they would have known that from Emily Upjohn's defeat in the Coral Eclipse as well. And they would have also then known exactly how to beat him. So, look, it worked to perfection that day. It may very well work to perfection in this race as well. I'm with Auguste Rodin. That's my ambitious box exacta is going to be, and the trifecta will be Onesto, Up to the Mark, and Shahryar along with them. 1, 2, 3 for you, Barry Faulkner.
I'm with Mostahdaf. The 2 is Shahryar, and I don't know about the third leg at the moment. I can't see Auguste Rodin not being involved, but I think the other 2 might beat him.
Tim?
Oh, look, my play here is going to be Shahryar, the Japanese horse. A lot of respect for Mostahdaf. He's the other one I'd put in. A quick mention for Warlike Goddess. Gee, she's a really consistent filly. She's a wonderful story as well. You know, she only cost $1,200 as a weanling, and here she is. She's won 11 of 17. Good run in this last year when she finished 3rd. Not too worried about the draw for her because she's a hold-up type. I mean, ideally, they'd probably prefer to be in 7, 8, 9, somewhere around there, but The draw for her isn't as bad as what it would be for a few others. So, she's not getting any younger. She's a 6-year-old now, but win, lose or draw, I think you'll get a run for your money.
Producer Trish just said, you're probably wrong about this, but remind everybody that you did have the forecast in this race last year and that you argued with Barry that Rebel's Romance was the better of the two Godolphin horses and that he would win. And everybody, including Naomi and Barry, were all saying, no, you're wrong. And here's why. So maybe broken clocks and all that will be right again. Perhaps. That's again, fat guy in the milkshake store clutching at straws, because more than likely the boys are right and Mostahdaf is the one who's going to go and win. Breeders' Cup Classic, which is run at the earlier time of 10:40 and the third last race on the card. I kind of lost a little bit of interest in this race, Barry, after Arcangelo came out. So I'm very much dependent on both of you to guide me through. Arabian Night for that paragon of virtue. Bob Baffert is the 11-4 favorite. Is he going to win?
I don't think so. It's interesting. I'm not sure he's even the best horse from the Baffert barn, because the one of his that won the Pensy Derby, I can't find at the moment. What's Baffert's other horse in this race? Saudi Crown. I think, to me, he looks almost the equivalent of that. I've read a lot and heard a lot about the older horses not being up to the mark this year. But White Obario, again, going to a trainer with a history, shall we say. He's come up with a stonking run last time. But I love the Japanese horse here, Ushba Tesoro, and again another one whose record is very, very hard to knock. And the quality of the Japanese horses coming and tackling races in USA, in Dubai, not so much in Europe. The Arc, Holy Grail, still evades them, but Ushba Tesoro is my idea of the winner in this race.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was all over Arcangelo for this, and it's a real shame that he's retired. I can't quite get away from the Japanese Raider, for all that my knowledge of American dirt racing is not quite what it used to be. But he does stick out like a sore thumb, and the fact that Barry is so keen on him makes me keen on him as well, Tim. Do you have an alternative view, though?
Actually, I don't. I'm going for the Japanese Raider as well. I'll tell you why in a moment, but I want to throw you guys a pop quiz now.
Uh-oh.
Okay, this race was first run in 1984. Bob Baffert's won it 4 times, the first time in 2014. Those 4 winners all had, well, at least 2 things in common, but 2 things that jump off the page for mine. Now, obviously, he's got the favourite here, so that will give you a little bit of a clue. But his winners, by the way, Bayern in 2014, American Pharaoh the next year, Arrogant in 2016, and Authentic in 2020. What did all 4 have in common? A couple of things.
Yeah. But I know one thing, that what Bayern had not in common with anything, he used the luckiest of the 4. The horse that should have beat him there got completely wiped out at the starting gate. And I'm not talking from my pocket, because I actually backed Bayern as one of the luckiest winners I've ever had in my life, because the horse that would have beaten him got killed. When I said killed, didn't get killed. He got lots of trouble, should we say. Blinkers, tossing one in?
No, look, it's a very simple thing. But
Same prep run?
No, well, it's a very simple thing, because it lines up with Arabian Night. All 4 of his winners have been 3-year-olds.
3-year-olds, yeah. I've just seen.
Oh,
this fella's a 3-year-old and he's going to lead. So, look, I don't think he's certainly not as good as American Pharaoh, Arrogant or Authentic. But I don't think this is an overly tough race. So I think that, I want to say it's not overly tough. I think it's a good race, but I don't think it's a great renewal. So I can see why he's favourite for Bob Baffert. He'll jump from the outside. He'll look for the lead, and depending on what happens from there, and there is a bit of pace here. But I'd be prepared to take him on. I also like Ushba Tesoro. Like, he's been an absolute revelation, this horse, since switching to dirt. If you look at his record beforehand, he had 22 starts on turf. He was a 3-time winner. No one knew the horse. Even in Japan, they barely knew the horse. They switch into the dirt. He's won 6 from 7, including this year's Dubai World Cup, when he came from last in a big field around the bend to win, I think, by about 2.5 lengths running away. And here's an interesting thing for you. After Dubai, they put him away to avoid the summer heat in Japan. The connections have actually come out and said he doesn't like hot weather. So hence, they basically put him away for all of summer. they brought him out for a return run in a race far less than this as his lead up. He duly won that, and here he is ready to roll at the Breeders' Cup. As I say, I don't think there's no standout horse in the race, as you would expect in a dirt classic. There's plenty of speed here. He's going to be out the back, so I guess he's going to need some luck. But you know, I think potentially the Japanese could run a play with the classic this year.
Do they know what the temperature is in California right now?
Yeah, it's not too bad, to be fair. It's a lot better than here, but they're balmy days. It's not stinking hot like you get in the middle of summer. I think it's the low 20s over there this week, is it not? Which is what's actually, that's about 75 or something.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually, because Laura King was talking about her boots being destroyed, and then Rory Delargy was making that joke about how she's missed a trick there. She really should have been auctioning those on. Laura's too innocent to get what he was saying. Right, the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. Actually,
I think I'm too innocent to get what you're saying.
Laura King, one of the best in the game. Make sure you're following on Twitter if you are not already, and she is there at the Breeders' Cup doing some fantastic updates. And there are some of her old boots knocking around if you want to get them as well. What is the 1, 2, 3 for you in the Breeders' Cup Classic? Barry Faulkner.
Throw me. I've moved on to the next race. I think
Tim Carroll.
Take it away, Tim.
All right, well, I'm going to be really boring. I'm looking at the top of the market. I'm going to put Ushba Tesoro in, Arabian Night for second, and White of Mario, who ran big last time out. Only had a couple of runs for the trainer, as Barry said. He's got a little bit of history there. I'm just slightly concerned about him in a high-pressure 10-furlong race. If this was a 9-furlong race, he'd probably be my play. So if you want to do it in a tote way, my numbers here, 8, 12, and 3.
I like it. Barry?
I'll have the 2 Baffert horses following home the Japanese. So that is Arabian Night, the 12, and the other one, Saudi Crown, the 6.
All right, to the Breeders' Cup.
Sorry, I do apologise, not a Baffert horse. The Brad Cox trained Saudi Crown.
The Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, 11:25 our time. Living the Dream is the 4-1 favourite after being beaten in his prep run at Keeneland over 5.5 furlongs. Fairy tale story for trainer Adam West, who I've spoken to on the podcast and on TalkSport 2 as well. Absolute gentleman. And this horse obviously is going to ping from the gates. 4-1. Bradsell 9-2, the Royal Ascot winner. Caravel, who was coming to Royal Ascot, then they decided to go for a race at New York instead. A 10-1 shot, and obviously a big winner on Breeders' Cup night last year. Barry, have you settled on a selection for this race?
I'm probably going to talk myself into one, or you guys will talk me into one here. The point for me about Living the Dream was he went 5.5 furlongs last time at Keeneland, and he was only picked up at the half furlong pole. So after 5 furlongs, he was actually in the lead. Got out quicker than the Americans. I mean, you think how Americans are noted for getting swiftly out of the gate. Well, he beat them to it and led them a merry dance. He'd got other speed horses around him, but they couldn't touch him. He's going to have lots more here. Must have a chance of seeing it out, but they're going to be charging. If you're on him and he gets out, then you'll be squeaky bum time as they turn for home. So I'm not going to go with him. I'm actually turning into a Sino. I know it's Sino Japanese. Someone's a fan of Japanese with Jasper Crone, the 11 horse, and again another one with good form coming out of Japan. A couple of people I know who know Japanese racing have got me interested in this one at a big price. And in a race where I've got nothing that's a standout for me, then he's going to carry my modest few pounds.
The 5 furlongs at York would be probably the quickest 5 furlong race in Britain. How would the 5 furlong York track compare to Santa Anita, Barry?
Well, obviously you're going around the turn. Interestingly, when I look at this race normally, and same with the Juvenile Sprint, I look for horses who've run well at Chester, Lingfield, anywhere where there's a swift turn. And of course, who won the sprint a couple of years ago, I think I'd run at Chester and run well at Chester. So I'd look for horses who've actually gone round a turn, and so that would be my point. And the fact that Living the Dream has gone round a turn at Keeneland and gone round a turn at Lingfield Park, by the way, would certainly turn me on to him I'm not so sure about Bradstall. If you look at his form, Curragh, York, Ascot, Haydock, none of these are turning tracks. So he's got to take his ability to take a turn on trust.
Yeah, that would concern me. Luke Morris obviously replaces Holly Doyle, who's suspended, but that would be a major concern for me. He needs to turn form around with Living the Dream as well. Would Santa Anita be a similar speed track to York then over the 5 furlongs, Barry?
Well, yeah. I mean, Santa Anita, the turf track is always going to be a speed track there because, again, I think the weather's set fair for the week. So, when we're calling it a firm, it wouldn't even be our good firm. It'd probably be genuine firm. Even when they call it a good track, it's not our good. So you've got to be able to handle very sharp ground.
Tim, who's your pick?
Yeah, look, it's a funny race, isn't it? Because when we look at the turf races, I think even the Americans, the first ones they look at are the European runners. But oddly enough, the one you mentioned, Glass Slippers, she's the only winner from Europe in this race since 2008. Yet I think we've got the top 2 in the betting in Living the Dream and Bradstall. But I think we can see a bit of a fairy tale here. I think Adam West and Sean Corraine can win it with Living the Dream. That race, that prep run in America, he went quick, as he's only got one speed, hasn't he? Absolutely flat out, but he did get dogged all the way. And the 2 horses that were up there with him, they finished way out the back, whereas he finished 4th, not beaten far. And as Barry mentioned, that was 5.5 furlongs. This is 5 furlongs. They're not, even though this is a Breeders' Cup race, believe you me, they're not going to go any quicker in this than what they went in his prep race. So I think we can get a little bit of a fairy tale there. I think Living the Dream is going to be tough to beat. If I was to flag up a couple of others, I think Caravel, she won this race last year. She's won 15 from 25. I think she's a little bit overpriced at the moment. The concern would be with her, she's only ever gone to the West Coast on one occasion, and that's when she bombed badly in this race in 2021. But having said that, she had an awfully tough trip, made it wide all the way. So I think you can forgive that one. And there's another one there by the name of Nobles. Now, he's actually by Noble Mission. We all remember Noble Mission, Frankel's brother. You wouldn't really expect a Noble Mission to be, going around 5 furlongs in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. But since August of last year, he's had 7 starts on 7 different tracks. And I know that's something we see a lot of over here, but that's rare in America. Normally they're based somewhere and then the good ones move around for the bigger races. He's won in 2 countries, Canada and America. He's won on the turf. He's won on the all-weather. Now, this will be his first time at the top level, but at the moment, he's just running very, very well. He's quite versatile as well. He's very quick, so I would imagine they'll look to go forward. And his speed figures, he's got a little bit to find with a few of these, but they kind of put him in the mix. So they'd be my top 3. But I do hope that Living the Dream, and I think he can. I'd just love to see it for Adam West and Sean Corraine. I just think it'd be a really nice story.
It's fantastic that Sean... Go on, Barry.
Sorry, just thinking the point you're making, I absolutely agree with everything you say, Tim. And it would be no surprise if he won, and I'd be cheering his lads anyone. Caravel's the one that interests me. The point you made about her is that she was 40-1 when she won this last year.
Yeah.
And her form this year is not fallen off a cliff. She's been beaten a couple of times, but had excuses 2 back. She got a right old whack at the start at Saratoga. She's only done a neck last time in a short field, and the sort of price she was 7-1. You said she wouldn't surprise me if she was a repeat either.
She ran, to give you a little bit of a guide, she ran 2nd in the Franklin and only beat a short margin last time. Now, that's the race she won coming into this last year, but she ran exactly the same speed figure both years. So you'd have to think she's exactly where she was at last year, and she was good enough to win this. So if I was to flag one up that I think is a bit overpriced, I'd have to say last year's winner, Caravel, would be the one.
Yeah, the Racing Post gave her a rating of 119 for her, 116 for her win in this race last year. Despite the fact that she was beaten the last time, she's still got an RPR of 119. Yeah, so she's ahead.
I just got one kickback to Tim when you said that we've runners from this side of the pond have only won this once. Last year behind Caravel. Caravel was the only US trained winner of a turf race, and the next 3, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, were all trained over here. So
yeah, I suppose the only point I'm making there is that with the turf races, when you look at the classics, especially when they stretch out a bit, the Europeans have been so dominant, or if not dominant, they've certainly more than held their own. This is the one race, if you're talking about wins on the board, it's the one we've struggled to win. But It's no surprise. Actually, it's a very good point, because when you look back at when Glass Slippers won it, how she won it, Tom Eves was like, you had to thread the needle everywhere. She was over to the rocket, she was over to the left, and she got there. Whereas I suppose with Living the Dream, he's more like an American horse. He's going to bang out, so he doesn't have to worry about all those sort of things, because he's going to be, he's going to be off from the bell. So look, potentially, I think, hopefully anyway, you give Europe their second win in the race.
Yeah, Living the Dream literally is the American point and shoot job, but he's trained in Epsom. It would be a fantastic story if he goes and wins. I think the 9-1 about Caravel is just too big. So I'm going to side with her.
Yeah, she was helped last year, of course, because Golden Pal completely missed the break.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing. Please don't let Living the Dream actually, for once, miss the break. If he's out, he's got every chance.
Did you see how many mares Golden Pal covered in his first season?
No.
257.
Well, to be fair, he is a sprinter. If you look at, I was looking at this the other day, just while you catch
something in that line that I'm not seeing, Tim.
Yeah, I've kind of got a feeling that but look, Flightline, really interesting, isn't it? He's got 152 mares. I was having a look at his book, and honestly, I sort of made a bit of a joke that might be a little bit inappropriate. I don't know. But to put it in human terms, when you look at his book, it'd be like if Usain Bolt went to start and his book was basically every lady athlete that won a medal at the last couple of Olympics. It's incredible. And here's the thing, he's got 152 mares there. Now, okay, there'll be a couple of deals, so it doesn't quite work out this way, but he's 200,000, so he's going to turn over 30 million American in his first season.
And then we wonder why they retired him.
Yeah.
My goodness. I saw that tweet and I'm pretty sure I liked it. It was a class one. Right. The final race, gentlemen, is the Qatar Racing Breeders' Cup Sprint, 6 furlongs, Elite Power, the 6-4 favorite for Bill Mott, Irad Ortiz Jr., Dr. Chevelle, an 11-2 shot, Speedboat Beach for Bob Baffett and Mike Money Smith, 6-1, and Goodnight, a 7-1 shot. I'm being grabbed in and sucked in by Goodnight here. That 7-1 just seems a little bit too big to me. But Barry, who do you like in the last race of the Breeders' Cup 2023?
It's an odd one, isn't it? I'm trying to work out the pace profile. I don't know whether Tim's got any views on that, but it really does seem to be a sprint without speed. That, going back to in the date, in the first 23 years of this race, there was only one single figure field. Since the addition of the Filly Mare Sprint and the Turf Sprint, I think there've been something like 8 in the 16, or 7 or 8 in the 16 years since. This race has become vastly less competitive. 10-1 was around 10-1 average price of the winner. Median price of the winner in the first 23 years. 5-1 in the last 16. But the puzzle here is Elite Power is clearly the best horse in the race, but is there enough speed in this for him to run down? I'm going to defer to Tim here because he's being the ex-jockey. He'll know all about having a clock in his head much more than I do.
Yeah, actually, I quite like the chosen Bron here, who isn't a tearaway leader either, but is able to sit up a little bit closer than what the favourite is. If you look at his profile, he ticks plenty of boxes. He's won 13 from 17, arrives here on a 9-timer. He won the Bing Crosby at Del Mar last time when having his first start in the Grade 1. But here's the thing for mine. At Santa Anita, 10 starts, he's a 9-time winner. He knows his way around this track better than half the trainers and jockeys. I actually quite like him in this.
Yeah, he's interesting because he's typical of what he used to get in the old days. The old lag gelding, 5-year-old who's been around the block a few times, and not many miles on the clock, and just developing into a brute of a runner, I think you'd call him.
Sorry, Barry, I was just going to say, getting back to the point you made, he's quite versatile tactically. I mean, he has led and he has tracked. So if there's no pace here, the rider can sort of put him on the pace. And if they surprise us and go a little bit quickly, he might take a hold. The other thing about this race as well, this is the 11th time that they've held the Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita. So in the previous 10 runnings, only one favourite has won this race at Santa Anita. And if you look at the last 20 years, overall, only 3 favourites have won this race. So, I think there's plenty to like about the chosen Bron in this.
I'm just looking down his form here, that he has run up that great sequence, but a lot of those were in California bred races. Reminds me a bit of the New York press, where they can pick up the maiden, pick up 2 allowances, pick up lots of lesser stakes, shall we say. But the big plus for him was that when he stepped into open company in the Bing Crosby, he showed he could get it done.
Yeah, exactly right. And again, I know we can talk about how the dirt's going to ride, but if you look at this race traditionally, pace runners do well. And as I say, the Chosen Bron, although he's no tearaway leader or anything like that, they've actually ridden him from mid-division and even a bit further back. But he has won from the front as well. So I think he's got a lot of things in his favour.
All right, he's 15-2. Barry, who are you going to side with?
What you got for Goodnight? What price you got for Goodnight in this?
7-1.
See, I think that's a good price, Goodnight, because they say he beat Elite Power 2 back around, that was over 7 furlongs, and I think he is likely to race closer to the place than Elite Power is. But the key horse for me here is Speedboat Beach, the Baffert horse who likes to be on the front end, and I could see him setting a pace. It depends how quick they go early. If they really go like Stink, then it will set up perfectly for Elite Power, but it's no gimme. And I'm beginning to get a little bit warm on Goodnight.
Yeah, I'm being suckered in here. I was all over him last year. I was all over him in Dubai. It didn't work out particularly well in either of those races, and now I'm all over him again. Naps, gentlemen. Actually, I'll get a 1, 2, 3 from you here. Goodnight to lead home who, Barry?
The 3 outside horses. Oh, no, actually, no. I've got a sneak for Dr. Shibble, who actually was only beaten a nose in this a couple of years ago. So he'll be in there. The 2 and the 2 outside, 8-9. 2-8-9, my 3 for the box exacta.
Okay. And Tim?
Yeah, look, I'm going to go with the Chosen Bron. I'll put Elite Power in for 2nd and Goodnight for 3rd.
Gentlemen, Naps, best bets of Breeders' Cup 2023. Who is your nap, Tim Carroll?
Oh, look, I'd say Goodnight Olive in the Fillies Mare's Turf Sprint, but she's going to be pretty short, so I think I need to be a little bit more game than that. I'm going to go Margin a Turf Mile. I think she'll be plenty tough to beat in that. Okay,
she's definitely in some elaborate lucky 63 of mine as we try to shoot the lights out. Barry Faulkner, your nap?
Porta Fortuna is my the bet I would recommend for one of the O'Brien boys.
And of a value play, who would you be keenest on, Barry?
Ooh, probably Jasper Crone in the Turf Sprint.
Tim, same for you?
I'm going to go with Shahryar in the Turf Classic, the Japanese horse.
He will be placed, but he'll be placed behind Auguste Rodin, the nap of the meeting. That's it. Thank you very, very much for watching, listening. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, likes and shares on social media, and of course, a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast app is much appreciated. It really helps with the algorithm. From Barry Faulkner, Tim Carroll, and myself, all the best. Gamble responsibly and all that malarkey for Breeders' Cup 2023. It's going to be an absolute barnstormer. Naomi Tucker will be here to review it all with us on Monday. Until then, be safe, be well, look after yourself and each other. God bless.